So it's 8 o'clock, and because it's 8 o'clock, it's time for Selihot. And I'm so delighted that we have with us Rabbi Jerry Sirota, Executive Director Emeritus of the Interfaith Council of Metropolitan Washington. Following upon his recent retirement, he served at various colleges as a Jewish campus chaplain for 28 years and as a congregational rabbi, of course, and founder of Shirat HaNefesh congregation in Chevy Chase for 14 years. He was a co-founder of Clergy Beyond Borders and of a number of Jewish social justice organizations, including New Jewish Agenda and Rabbis for Human Rights in North America. And all that cannot, in any way, shape, or form, actually make justice to who Rabbi Jerry Sirota is for us, and specifically for me, one of my mentors, no question about it. So without any further ado, I am going to invite you to begin to teach us about Ana Bekorenu tonight.
Thank you so much, and thank you for this wonderful series introducing us to Selihot in a depth and in a beauty we never would have imagined that we could do. You and I spoke about this project as a concept. I couldn't imagine that so many people around the world would want to participate and lead and join us and study. It's just been a beautiful experience for all of us. So thank you especially to you. And I had an early opportunity to choose which piyut I could.
You had protexia.
Yes, I had protexia, and I chose Ana Bekorenu, and it had some relationship to the work I've been doing in interfaith. But there are many reasons why I chose it, but it has wonderful, interesting, and resonant Hebrew. But I think I chose it because I love chanting it so much in the way that you've taught us in Shirat HaNefesh, and I hope I don't take too much time with my explanations and references to the language, that we'll have a chance for everybody to hear the way you do it. Although I did find another version online that we're going to listen to as well, and it's a very interesting comparison. When we do it in Shirat HaNefesh, we really have the feeling that this is a Sephardi piyut, and the way you chanted, Ramon, it feels very much as it comes from the Arab world, Arabic-speaking world, North Africa.
I don't know.
You can tell us, in fact, whether the melody that you use is Moroccan, which is what I suspect. But this is the quintessential slicha. It asks over and over again for God to listen to us, to hear us, and to forgive us. Shema Adonai, Salach Adonai. So the essence of what we want and what we need to hear in a slicha for this period is in this particular piyut. The piyut was written around 900 years ago in Saragossa, in northeastern Spain. When we see the Hebrew text, you'll see a clue, as is frequently in medieval Hebrew poetry. We have the name of, or part of the name, first name of the author, David, and the author of the language. I'm not sure the author of the melody that we chant is David ibn Bekuda. That's the way he's mentioned in the machzor that we use. Joe Rosenstein is the editor. Is David Chazak, it says in the beginning of the piyut. Now, David ibn Bekuda is the cousin, almost certainly the cousin, or some other close relative of Bacha ibn Bekuda. Whose name is usually spelled with a P, but there actually is no P in Arabic.
Right. Peace. Right.
And so Ibn Bekuda and Ibn Bekuda are the same person. And
Right.
Ibn Bekuda, who was his cousin, also was a contemporary in Saragossa, and is most well known for his early book of Musar, Chovot Halvavot, which was written in Arabic, as was most of the philosophic writing of the Jews of Spain, including Yehuda Halevi and Moshe ibn Gavriel and Maimonides, Moshe ben Maimon, all wrote their philosophic works in Arabic, and they were very influenced, all of them, by Arabic poetry and Arabic songs, piyutim. David ibn Bekuda is a contemporary of Moshe ibn Ezra, who also wrote in the same kind of style. So once we get, if we could take a look at the text, I can show you just quickly something about the rhythm and rhyme. If we look at the Hebrew text, we can share that on the screen. So we'll just look quickly at the little bit of the overall structure. That's good. And that's good. And then we'll hear a version of it. And then I'll talk a little bit more about the content of it. If you look at it on the, hopefully people know enough Hebrew, they can see Ana bekorenu lekol shavatenu Adonai Shema'a. Ana barachamecha avon bitzarenu Adonai slacha. And you see those two lines, that's a kind of a pismon in there. Every stanza of this is followed by one or the other of these lines. Ana bekorenu lekol shavenu Adonai Shema'a, or Ana barachamecha avon bitzarenu Adonai slacha. So that repeats, and it's an interesting form. The Shema'a and the Slacha that follows the Shema Adonai, Salah Adonai, Adonai Slacha. That Slacha, it sort of softens the way we ask of God. I think it's a grammatical form called the cohortative. It's a way of saying, please, after we've said, listen to us, God, or forgive us, God, then we say it in a little more gentle way. May God forgive us. May God listen to us. Although we Jews are perfectly capable of saying, Shema Adonai, Shema Kolenu, Salach Lanu. I mean, we do address God directly, but the payytan also uses a more polite form, let's say, with Shema and Slacha. And both of these are very strong, and I think important for as we look at this even in a contemporary sense. Adonai barachamecha avon bitzenu. Listen to our voices, please. In Ana bekorenu, when you call to us, listen to the voice of our crying out. This is that same expression, shavenu, is used by the Israelites, used of the Israelites in Egypt. So it's a particular call that we are enslaved. Now, are we enslaved? Are we oppressed? Is the situation of the payytan in Saragossa around the year 1100? Is he talking about spiritual oppression, or is he talking about physical oppression? My strong sense of looking through the entire piyut and knowing something about the convivencia of that period, the relative harmony in which the Jews lived with the Muslim and Christian neighbors before the events of the Crusades and other political controversies. This was a time that was more like our time than most times in Jewish history. And I'm interested also in the way the second line, Ana Ana barachamecha avon bitzenu Adonai tzlacha. So avon bitzenu is an expression that's from Isaiah, and it's in the Haftarah for Yom Kippurim, and it's the particular sin related to profit making. It's a material sin. It's a sin of prosperity is the way I look at it. It's a sin that we do in business, or a sin that comes not from being in a humble position, but it's a sin of capitalism, advanced capitalism, if you will. It really has to do with oppressing the poor. So I think there are little hints of the situation being not so far from our own situation throughout this particular period. We have all these medieval piyutim in the Haggadah and other places where we're in an oppressed situation. I think this is a really spiritual piyut that reflects a situation where the Jews were comfortable, spoke the language, were part of the intellectual class, but still wanted to remind wants to remind his fellow Jews of where of the things that they've done wrong, even if they're not suffering under the thumb of another people. So let's turn to a version of it. One that I came across on the internet is by Eyal Biton. It's very, unlike the one we do in Shirat HaNefesh. It's a very melodic, even though you can feel a little bit of Moroccan arrangement underneath it. According to the internet, Eyal Biton is a chazan in Portland, Oregon. Maybe, I don't know if he's still there. He grew up in Zaire and Montreal. Biton is a popular Moroccan family name in Israel, so there must be some Moroccan in his heritage. So let's listen to that, but if we could keep the Hebrew on the screen, because it's a little bit hard to make out the words if you're not looking at them. So if we could listen to it and try to follow along in the Hebrew, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the specific language that's chosen, and we'll definitely leave time for Ramon to teach us a little bit of the way that he chants this Slicha in our services at Shirat HaNefesh.
So if you don't mind, I am very tempted, since you're talking about Arabic poetry, that these first two lines actually are going to repeat as a refrain on every one of the stanzas. And like the muashach, one of the forms of the Arabic poetry, if you notice, lakachti, yuhamti, but then shavenu, shamecha, amecha, bitzenu, shebacha, nitzacha, shavenu, evyonim, kashanim, bitzenu. So it's how it's actually making sure that there are two lines that rhyme, but the third, a little bit of what we actually learned with Lecha Dodi, for instance, where the pizmon, the refrain, actually does not match. So anyway, we'll listen.
Yes, wonderful.
Ana bekorenu lekol shavenu amna shema ana berachmecha avon bitzenu amna selaha tevarim lakachti shemonai vehechlo yuhamti seamonai ana bekorenu lekol shavenu amna shema mimeron shalecha shemonai ve'adat amecha seamonai ana berachmecha avon mitzenu amna selaha yom olchi shevacha shemonai meshuma nitzacha selahamonai ana bekorenu lekol shavenu amna shema dalim ve'evyonim שממוני אדומים כשנים סלח עמוני אנא ברחמך עוון מצאנו עמי סלחה חרדים נגדך שממוני ולי אני עבדך סלח עמוני אנא בקוראנו לכל שכנו עמי שמע זמירות מהרנה שממוני ורוע מעללה סלח עמוני אנא ברחמך עוון מצאנו עמי סלחה כל שארית יעקב שממוני עוון כל לב הכל סלח עמוני אנא בקוראנו לכל שכנו עמי שמע אנא ברחמך עוון מצאנו עמי סלחה.
So that's a very beautiful and melodic version of something that's supposed to shake, in a sense, it's supposed to shake you up. It's almost, I mean, we sing this or chant this close to the time where we do the viduim, the confessionals, al chet shechatanu, and the version it's beautiful, but it's not as intense or driving as the piyut feels to me. So if we could take a look at the English, that page that's in our Matzor, because the editor did a wonderful job of translating, and also he has some footnotes that were very helpful to me. And although I caught one or two things that he didn't catch. Now, if we I think minimize the I've got to get back on there so I can see what you're seeing. So, and are we able to get that text as large as we can? Not the Hebrew this time, nor the translation.
Okay.
Move over a little bit to get the translation there.
Yeah.
You see this avon bitzenu. Betza just means prophet, so it's the sin of our prophet making is the sin that we keep calling back in. But there's a back and forth here that's very interesting. Some of the verses there make references to other things that are part of the Yamin Noraim and the Yom Kippur liturgy as it is, particularly Devarim Lakachti. The second, I guess it's the first verse after the first team. It's hard to see Devarim there, but I've translated here as I've gathered my thoughts. Please listen, but it's part of the take with you Devarim and return to God. That's part of the Haftarah for Shabbat Shuvah, which our editor translates elsewhere in the Matzor as get your act together. But it means take with you words or things. It's the beginning of confession and come back to God. So you need to take your words. You have to verbalize what you've done. And that's where he continues. I've regretted my sins. Please forgive. The Dalim ve'Evyonim that's in the third of the stanzas, I guess you would call them. It means poor people and destitute people listen to us. And I love what he's translated there. Our good deeds clothe us like rags. Please listen. Those are we're like the people at the time of Isaiah who are fasting with sackcloth and ashes and trying to look humble. But what they really are humble and poor in is good deeds. They're missing good deeds. So please understand us. We have sins, and they've turned those garments into into scarlet, into red as the color of violence and blood. The next verse starts Haredim negdecha, which we are tremblers before you. This is the one time when all of us are Haredim. It's on the high holidays, on Yemim Narim. The word Haredim, which usually translates ultra-Orthodox or makes reference to ultra-Orthodox, means the people who tremble. And the people who tremble before God are people who are standing in judgment. So note that we are all Haredim. And we want God to understand that we understand that we're Haredim. The phrase Roa Ma'alechem is from Jeremiah. He mentions that in the footnotes, and that's a description of the sinners of his day. And I particularly like the next verse, where I guess it's the following verse: Kol She'erit Yaakov, all of the
remnant.
The remnant of Yaakov, of Israel, the saving remnant of it, the voice of the She'erit Yaakov, and then the rhyme is Avon Kol Lev Yaakov. So that's of course a play on Yaakov's name, who is the heel. He's the heel. He's the one who takes the heel of his brother Esau in the womb. But Lev Yaakov is a wayward heart here, or Joe uses another expression elsewhere, the cheating heart, which we know in American country western music. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about a cheating heart. So these images are very strong and powerful, and they remind us that it's that we have to understand what it means to be forgiven and what it means to be heard by God. I wanted to speak a little bit about that. It's easy for us to think about what it means to be forgiven because we know, and we read over and over again throughout Yom Kippur, that if we reconcile ourselves with our fellow human beings, then God will be reconciled with us. It's clear to us that God will forgive us. It's not so clear if we can forgive ourselves and if we can forgive other people. That's in some ways the bigger challenge. And how do we know that God has listened to us and responded to our prayer? That there are many answers in Jewish tradition. They span from the pragmatic, if you rise from prayer a better person, then God has answered your prayer. Or if you experience God's presence, that's the answer. That's the answer, the Martin Buber. There is no answer except experiencing the presence of God. That's how you know that God has listened to you. It's not a petitionary prayer. That we can never understand whether the good comes from our own behavior or from luck or from the heavens. But the presence of God we can experience. And Heschel would answer the question, or would ask the question in a different way, which is that God is always answering us, but we have to be asking the question. We'll hear the answer, but we have to ask the question. And that's what prayer is about, trying to understand how God is answering us from the universe and from God's creation, whether that creation is the universe itself or our fellow creatures. So to bring us more intensity in seeking in a polite way, Adonai Slaha, and to ask God to listen to us in a polite way, Adonai Shema'a. Ramon, if you could teach us the way you chant this, because it's extremely powerful and will feel like we're in both Morocco and Spain, I think, and doing something that's been done by our people in just this form for at least 900 years.
Yeah, very quickly, this piyut, like so many other pizmonim, actually take the root always from Spain. You have to, you remember when Rambam with Maimonides said that if you say amen to a prayer, you fulfill your duty. Meaning that people did not have a sidur, or they don't have a machzor, and they could not actually know the whole tefillah, shura bapeh, like they had it completely memorized. So the Shaliach Tzibur, the person that actually led, was not necessarily somebody that has such a pleasant voice, but somebody that knew the complete tefillah, so people could say amen and fulfill their duties. So when that happened, and when in the Oriental world, when there was not a lot of things written, there is a lot of this piyutim. You remember Aneinu, Adona Selihot, and so many others, where you don't have to know the whole text. You can learn Adonai Shema, Adonai Selacha, and then you yotze, and you actually fulfill the obligation. So the first response is Adonai Shema. And the second, Adonai Selacha. So that would be the first time, right? Let's see. Ana bekorenu bekol shavenu Adonai Shema. Ana berachamecha avol mitzenu Adonai Selacha. And now it becomes a little faster. דברים לקחתי, שמע אדוני, וחטא בו יוחמתי, סלח אדוני ענה, בקורנו, לכל שווינו, אדוני שמע. So let's go from the beginning, yeah? And let's, is that all right, Jerry? ענה בקורנו, אדוני שמענה ורחמך עוון מצאנו אדוני סלחה דברים לקחתי שמע אדוני ובו יוחמתי סלח אדוני ענה וקוראנו בכל שמנו אדוני שמע ממעון שמך שמע אדוני וחטאת עמך סלח אדוני ענה ורחמך עוון מצאנו אדוני סלח דלים ואביונים שמע אדוני אדומים כשנים סלח אדוני ענה וקוראנו בכל שמענו אדוני שמע חרדים נגדך שמע אדוני לישראל עמך סלח אדוני ענה ברחמך עוון ביצנו אדוני סלחה זמירות נעללי סלח אדוני לעלות ועללי סלח אדוני ענה וקוראנו לכל שווינו אדוני שמע כל שארית יעקב שמע אדוני עוון כל לב עקב סלח אדוני ענה ברחמך עוון ביצנו אדוני סלחה.
Thank you so much. I hope people chanted along, and I hope you're making choices on the internet. You could choose to be with Shirat HaNefesh, because I'm sure we will do that on Kol Nidre Eve as one of the Selihot, as we do every year. Thank you all for being with us. I noticed a question in the chat from my dear friend Virginia Spatz that you won't find it in an Ashkenazic machzor. You'll find it in almost any Sephardic machzor, and I'm sure we can send copies if people only have a Ashkenazic machzor to use. I just remind you of a particular particular saying which the Reform movement likes to claim is created by a Reform rabbi, and I've heard it said as this was a Hasidic statement, but it actually comes from Augustine in the 4th century, which is that on this, the Yamin Norim, and any time that we pray, we should pray as if everything depends on God, and we should act as if everything depends upon us. So this is a time for praying and a time for action, both during the Seret Yimei Teshuvah. So thank you so much for the opportunity and for being with us. And thank you, Ramon, for teaching us as always.
תזכה למצוות, תזכה לשנים רבות ונעימות. May we all get to a Chatima Tova, that we will be sealed in the book of life. I want to remind you that tomorrow night we have another treat. Of course, tonight is an extraordinary thing. To hear our Rabbi Jerry. Tomorrow night, another dear friend of us, Nan Wellens, is going to be taking us to a different place. She's going to be talking to us about Misheu, a song composed by Ehud Manor and Mati Caspi, and Chai by Abraham Toledano and Uri Kariv. And she's right here, so we know of her. She's a strong supporter of Selihot. So I hope everyone comes and be with us. If you are not sure, we're going to conclude all the sessions of Selihot on Yom Kippur afternoon at 4:15 for an hour. We're going to do a review of all the, not everything, of course, we have been experiencing through Elul and now the month of Tishrei. All I have to say is Laila Tov. I hope that everybody continues being inspired with the beautiful words and music that Rabbi Jerry left us with all the way to tomorrow night. Thank you so much, everyone. Good night. Laila.
Beautiful. Yasher Koach, Jerry. Just wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Laila Tov.
Laila
Tov.
Tov.